Hey there, and welcome back to The Sims 3. My name is Pete, and today we complete another episode of this attempt to fully complete The Sims 3 World Adventures. Last time we left off, after beginning to build our adventuring party a home that better reflects everything they have accomplished so far, the first part of a much larger World Adventures museum was constructed, providing us with a fitting place to display our Egyptian relics and collections. Afterwards, we returned to Al Samhara once more to finish the last few remaining quest lines and searched for several missing pieces that ultimately helped us fulfill the private museum lifetime wish with William. Before we get started then, by popular demand, Captain Blue Pants here is finally also receiving a pair of actual blue pants. Normally, a mummy's outfit cannot be edited, but with the Unlock Outfits cheat, we can access a few additional clothing options and give our household guardian a look that finally matches his name. With that taken care of, the household can continue to spend the night inside the Egyptian Museum, which for the time being doubles as our sleeping quarters, while we move on to the next phase of construction. The Egyptian wing is, of course, only the first quarter of the much larger museum complex, and today we are adding its French counterparts. As you can see, the basic structure here is identical, another slightly raised octagonal building on the foundation, matching the dimensions of the Egyptian wing so that the entire setup remains symmetrical. Inside, we begin with 4 columns, just like before, although naturally these are taken from the French collection, and we also add a fireplace from the World Adventures expansion. Now, sadly, France does not offer nearly as many relic collections to display as Egypt does, and with nectar-making being its main feature, most of the French content is fairly culinary in nature. So, this wing will serve a secondary purpose as our new kitchen and dining area, or honestly, probably its primary purpose, considering just how little there is to put on display. For the overall look, I'm aiming for something rustic, perhaps a small countryside restaurant. We use a light sandstone floor and green as the main accent color. Near the dining table here, we can also add a small bar, which fits the French nectar theme rather nicely, I think. Let's also put a roof in place so that we can get a better idea of where the lights need to go. And by the way, most of the furniture in here comes directly from the French World Adventures collection, including a small sitting area in front of the fireplace. The design of the rug underneath the dining table here then was a little tricky for me. I once again wanted to do something with green, but without completely overcoloring the place. I think the end result looks decent enough. For the walls, we keep things fairly simple with off-white paint and wooden boards, and unlike the Egyptian room, this one actually also gets some windows. Now, even though nectar does age more quickly when stored in a cellar, we are moving our nectar racks into this room anyway, otherwise it would just be a little too empty. 2 can sit right next to the bar, while the remaining ones go onto the opposite wall. Of course, we also need at least some actual museum content in here, so let's begin with a small display for the unique French beetles and butterflies. Then we add a few more windows and place some of these rather expensive display stands between them, which will eventually hold the complete collection of French tomb sigils. Now, we do not have all of them just yet, but we already own 7 of the 9, and our next visit to Champs-les-Sims should allow us to complete the set. The expensive beverage maker, another World Adventures exclusive object, can also find a place on the kitchen counter, and a few curtains help bring some color to the windows. And with that, we can now move the 7 tomb sigils into place. I also wasn't entirely happy with the insect display, so we'll replace it with a few rustic barrels instead. The insects can still be shown off, of course, just on smaller individual display stands that were left in the family inventory after we finished decorating the Egyptian collection. Finally, time for a few plants. These ones come from the old dining area patio and should help make the room feel a little less empty. We can also add more lighting above the kitchen and the nectar shelves, then rearrange those shelves slightly to create a space in the middle for a sunflower and a painting, 2 of the relatively few decoration items that actually come with the French theme. The entrance is set up in a similar way to the Egyptian wing, although instead of using floor tiles to mark the special spot, we place a rug here and add a plant on top. I would have liked something a little more impressive, but most of the larger decorative plants in the expansion are Egyptian or Chinese themed, so this will have to do. And with that, I think the French wing is complete. It looks very cozy to me, admittedly more like a small restaurant than a museum, but considering the relatively limited selection of French relics and decorations, I think we did the best we could with the available options. I also deliberately left the nectar makers outside, since they are both noisy and not exactly pleasant to look at. All that remains is to sell a few objects from the old kitchen now that we no longer need, and then we can finally return to the gameplay. Uni is now the first to make use of our new building, grabbing a leftover slice of key lime pie for breakfast, and the rest of the household follows shortly after. Just like in the Egyptian wing, the room grants the beautifully decorated moodlet for a lovely plus 40 mood bonus, so apart from looking half decent I hope, the new setup is already providing a practical benefit as well. Once breakfast is taken care of, Uni and William head outside to tend to the garden. Uni improves her gardening skill to level 5 in the process, while Fabien and Captain Blue Pants continue working on nectar production. We still have at least one nectar-making skill challenge that I would like Fabien to complete today, so most of his time will once again be spent around these machines. Sanat meanwhile returns to the easel, hopefully for the final stretch towards painting level 10. William then sends a few gemstones away to be cut, while Uni teleports out into the neighborhood to collect even more for a transfiguration project later on. Afterwards, William heads back inside, lights the new fireplace, and sits down to study the 2 new recipes we purchased in Al-Samhara, shawarma and falafel. A few hours later, Uni has collected the final gemstone of her little tour and can return home as well. Back at the lots, all of the nectar makers are now producing, so Fabien takes the opportunity to serve one of his bottles to the household. This great quality nectar provides a plus 17 mood bonus for 8 hours, and that can go as high as plus 30 for the highest quality nectar. On top of that, drinking nectar also always applies the plus 15 sugar rush moodlet for 4 hours and even fills a small part of the hunger bar, so this is a very effective way to keep everyone in a good mood. Now, Sanat finishes another painting shortly after, although it is still not quite enough to push him to level 10. Fabien, meanwhile, returns to the more physical part of nectar making and begins squishing the next batches of fruit himself. This is important for the Flavorful Feet skill challenge, which requires him to personally squish 40 batches, and at the moment he is sitting at 35, mostly because this part of the job has been taken care of by Captain Blue Pants for the last few days. William now sends away the gemstones Uni collected, and then I noticed one final item that I forgot to place in the French wing, the French incense holder. Let's put that in the kitchen and light it for a permanent plus 10 mood bonus for all Sims in the room. Since Fabien is now occupied with the fruit squishing, Captain Blue Pants can take over the nectar-making process itself. His skill is only at level 2, but at this point the quality of these particular batches is no longer our main concern, we just need to keep the machines running. There is also one more item from the previous episode that I forgot about, and I believe I didn't even mention purchasing it, but from the merchant in Al-Samhara I grabbed this Egyptian chest here, and this can now go onto the entrance spot in the museum. This now gives us somewhere to store a few Egyptian item collections and clear some space in William's increasingly cluttered inventory. While we are rearranging things, the mailbox and the teleportation pad can also move closer to the new buildings, simply to make both of them a little easier to access. By the early evening, William has learned both the falafel and the shawarma recipe, and can now spend a few moments analyzing relics and space rocks just to kill some time. Outside, Fabien and Captain Blue Pants are still keeping all 3 nectar makers busy. There is, however, another collection we forgot to put on display last time, the Egyptian insects. We now have the complete set of the crypt moth, scarab beetle and Cleopatra butterfly, so let's move them into the Egyptian wing. I am admittedly not entirely happy with how this display looks, but the room is already fairly crowded with relics and other items, and this was the only arrangement I could find that still allowed everything to fit. Uni then gives the building another quick pathfinding test, and thankfully everything still works as intended. With all three nectar makers occupied, Fabien and Captain Blue Pants have a little time to talk about the outdoors. Both of them have the loves the outdoors trait, so this gives them an easy way to fill their social bars without moving too far away from the machines. Several hours later then, Fabien finishes squishing another batch of fruit, and that brings the total to 40, and with that, the Flavorful Feet skillenge is now finally complete, increasing the value of all nectar he produces from this point onwards. That leaves us with only one nectar-making challenge still missing, Visit of Vine. As mentioned last episode, this one may take quite a while, as it requires us to turn 400 grapes into nectar, but only homegrown grapes count, and as far as I know, only the varieties added in World Adventures qualify, not the base game grapes. There is also no way to check our current progress for this challenge, and I suspect we are still a fair distance away from completing it. Still, let's focus on the positives. For dinner, William serves the newly learned falafel recipe, or at least that was the plan, because before the household can sit down to eat, a fire breaks out in the French wing. The culprit is the fireplace, which has apparently decided to make an impression on its very first day. Luckily, Sanat here has the brave trait and immediately steps in to extinguish the flames. The situation is dealt with quickly, but both Uni and William now form the wish to install a fire alarm, which seems very reasonable, so let's purchase one and fulfill both wishes at the same time. With the danger taken care of, the household can finally sit down for dinner, even if Sanat chooses to eat alone at the bar for some reason. Before heading to bed, Fabien starts installing the improved pressing upgrade on one of the nectar makers, while Sanat returns to the easel and finishes his first large painting. That also completes the Brushmaster skill challenge for painting 30 paintings in total. However, more importantly, he is still not quite at level 10, so there is more work still left to do. As everyone settles in for the night, the newly installed fire alarm then goes off, because the fireplace has started another fire. Thanks to the alarm, the fire department is automatically called this time, but before the firefighter can even reach the place, Sanat has already extinguished the flames himself. For safety, Uni now shuts down the fireplace for the rest of the night, and with that, the household can finally go to sleep. On the next morning, we can already see the mail being delivered as Uni heads outside to begin another round of work in the garden. Sanat, meanwhile, uses a shower in the can to clean himself up, then spends a few romantic moments with Uni to refill his social bar before returning to the easel. William grabs the mail, and this time there are plenty of gemstones waiting for us in several different varieties and cuts. This is important because we now have everything we need for another round of transfiguration. First, we empty the display case that we want to use, then we place 8 of those cut gems on top. The recipe here requires at least 5 different types of gemstones and at least 2 different types of cuts. Once everything is in place, we can activate the transfiguration for another 500 simoleons and see what happens. And there we go. This produces an ultra-rare Soulpeace gem in its uncut form. Even like this, it is already worth almost 4,000 simoleons, so the result is certainly worth the investment. I don't think I need to mention that this is by far the most valuable gemstone available in the entire game, and we will of course increase its value even further by sending it away to be cut in just a moment. First of all though, the mail also contained the heart-shaped gemstones we sent away after the previous episode's Egypt trip, so those can now go on display as well. At this point, the only pieces still missing from the collection are the Chinese gems and the aforementioned heart-shaped Soulpeace gem. As you can see here, Tiberium is also part of the display for the moment, although it will not remain in this condition for very long. More on that next episode. William then sells a heart-shaped cut rainbow gem for roughly 3,000 simoleons and sends the new Soulpeace gem away to be cut in the same shape. With that taken care of, the household now gathers for breakfast. At this point, most of our immediate goals for the episode are finished, and everything is more or less waiting on Sanat to reach painting level 10. While we do, Fabien can plant a few more grapes to improve the quality of future harvests, then get together with William to play at the sprinkler to raise their respective fun bars. Uni meanwhile returns to the board breaker, this time using the option to break space rocks. This becomes available at martial arts level 9 and has a chance to produce gemstones, including some extremely valuable ones, and crucially without requiring any actual space rocks in the Sims inventory. Eventually, around the middle of the afternoon, Sanat finishes another painting and finally reaches painting level 10. With both a maxed out painting skill and a maxed out photography skill, Sanat has officially fulfilled the visionary lifetime wish, and that means only 2 more remain. Before moving on, we wait for Uni to attempt one more space rock block. The first one already dropped a gemstone, as you can see, and she has now formed a wish to break another. Even at martial arts level 10, success is not guaranteed with these, but in the early evening she finally cracks the rock and earns another 1500 lifetime happiness points. Sanat is also practicing martial arts in the background. He currently sits at level 9 and has a wish to max out the skill, while Uni collects the 2 gemstones dropped by the board breaker. Unfortunately, neither one of them is worth very much. At this point, the next big project on our list is a return to Shangsimla, China. Uni still needs to complete the Dragon Cave, as well as the entire martial arts tournament, but that is only one part of what we have left to do there. There are also still several smaller collection objectives waiting for us, including quite a lot of fishing, as China has 5 unique types of fish to catch, compared to only 3 each in France and Egypt. We are also still missing a few relics, and especially the more valuable ones may require a fair amount of searching before they finally appear. In short, there is still quite a bit of work left to do, and I hope you join me for it. For today though, I think we have reached a good point to make the cuts. As always, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can of course go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.peatcomplete.com, or become a channel member or Patreon supporter. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.